long time waiting for Cody to join us here. This is a bunch of filler at the very beginning of this video. So, hey everyone, thanks for joining. It's been a long time since we've had a solventless Q&A, and Cody is right on time.
Should be just a second. Thank you all for joining. How's it going?
Hey, how are you?
I am doing well. Can you hear me and see me all right?
I can. I'm just gonna try to set up my camera a little better. There we go. Can you hear me okay?
Okay. Yeah, everything's looking good. I'm gonna give this little speech a couple times throughout because we're gonna have viewers kind of come in and out of the show. So thanks everyone for tuning in today. We've had a pretty long hiatus from the Solventless Q&A series, but super stoked to get some of these back on board this year. So today we've got Cody Coulson with us. You've been a customer for a while, and I've personally seen your hash go from 0 to 60 over the course of the past year. So I'm super excited to get into it. For everyone who is tuning in right now, this will be available in full after. So if you can't tune in for the whole thing, totally fine. We'll also be putting it up on YouTube. And if you've got any questions, you can put a little question box down at the bottom and ask those. That's the easiest way because the comments kind of come and go really fast. So if you ask the question, it'll be easier for us to answer it. So without further delay, how's your day going, Cody? What's new?
It's going well. Every day we're in the facility, making hash. So living the dream.
Nice. And where are you guys located up in Canada?
So we're in Ontario, Canada, right on Lake Huron. So in a little town called Port Elgin.
Okay.
Yeah, so just in Ontario though.
Okay, nice. Was that kind of the plan all along to get started there, or when things started legalizing, were you looking for a place to land, or how did you decide on your spot in Canada?
Yeah, so I grew up in Port Elgin, and grew up in Canada, obviously. Yeah, it just seemed right to come back home and open up here. I also had a few friends back home. One of them had farmland and a barn that we could retrofit, which obviously helps. So yeah, the location was just home to me.
Awesome. That's cool. Doing actual homegrown, pun intended, extraction. So I've got a bunch of questions. We can start getting into those. But again, for everyone who's tuned in, if you've got a question for Cody, pop it in the comment box and we'll get to those. So tell us a little bit about your journey. Like, how did you get into this? Kind of what's your history as a hash maker and what's your involvement with the cannabis industry? What led you to here?
Yeah, so I've been in the legacy market since I was 15 years old. I'm 26 years old now. So it's been a journey. My father passed away when I was younger from cancer. So that got me interested in the pharmacology surrounding cannabis. When I turned 18, I also got my own epilepsy diagnosis, which got me further interested in the pharmacology surrounding cannabis. I was always the middle child as well, so I grew up always knowing where the good stuff was. But yeah, getting into solventless, I moved to Toronto. I started working at a few, dispensaries there before legalization. I started open blasting in my apartment, so BHO. I like to tell the story where I used to hide my hood because the BHO would come up, and my brother used to have a huge ass dog, and he'd have to hold the dog back because he'd think I'd be a burglar or something. But I blast like six to 20 cans of butane in the house. Let it purge out. My brother look over and ask me "Hey, is it okay if I light a joint?" Like, probably not right now. So that's how we started, and then we quickly transitioned to a panini press and some clamps. And destroy the panini press many times, just learning that way, and just getting interested, being surrounded by the culture, the whole way, being taught by you guys.
So were you growing along the same time?
Yeah, so
I've been growing.
Yeah, no worries at all. Yeah, so I'm more of a novice grower, honestly. Just started. I'm now with a tight-knit group of growers that really taught me the recipe of living soil, bokashi, worm castings, all that fun stuff. So I'm super happy to be part of that now. And yeah, I still consider myself a novice grower, and even a novice extraction artist. So yeah.
So you were involved, from a personal level with cannabis, due to your family and your personal situation, kind of took the same route I think a lot of extractors did, which is, doing some open blasting. It's like learning how to make basic hydrocarbon stuff at home. And then when did things start getting real serious about launching your own business or businesses? And tell us a little bit about, where you are now and kind of what you're running and what your businesses look like.
Yeah, so now I'm the founder of Coulson Cannabis. So it's an LP in Canada. When I was in Toronto, I met my buddy Omi, which is like a jack of all trades kind of guy, really good hatch maker as well. And I kind of told him what I wanted to do, and he was on board. We started, construction of the barn. Omi literally framed it up himself, constructed the whole thing himself. It was coming out of our own pockets for a long time. It got to a point where, we kind of ran out of money and didn't know which way to go. So we started looking for investors. Finally found an investor that kind of aligned with our similar goals in terms of quality over quantity, and then developing that brand and that trust. And once we found that investor, it kind of just took off from there. We finished the build out. We were considered the first licensed solventless extraction company in Canada, but we're the last to market. I always make that joke just because we're super picky with the product that we work with, and because the market and the way it is right now in Canada, very hard to source material if you're not growing it yourself. I kind of skipped over that. That's the whole reason why I got into solventless too. We didn't come from money. Building a whole grow would have been a really high risk, number one. A lot of R&D, a really hard way to get your foot in the door. I looked at solventless, I could build out the facility much cheaper, and develop that trust with the consumer. And the risk was me choosing the cannabis. And in my opinion, there was very little risk because I knew quality cannabis. So all the hard parts were done. The grows are done. I get to choose to bring it in, and kind of develop my brand, develop the trust that way. And then we'll get into, building the grow and getting into single source. But it was kind of our way to get in the foot in the door, just because we didn't come from wealth.
Yeah, no, that's a really cool story, because I think there's this perception that you're either on your end of the spectrum, which is like starting bootstrapped, very difficult to get going. You're not coming from some massive capital fund to get your business off the ground, or there's the people that have hundreds of millions of dollars, like some of the really big LPs up there. So I want to ask you a little bit about the licensing and kind of the regulatory stuff up in Canada. So are you a micro LP? Tell me a little bit about the different licenses here and kind of which one you were able to get.
Yeah, so they kind of break it down into two categories, the micro and the standard. We just decided to not go the micro route because they kind of put your hands behind your back and make it very difficult to navigate the industry. With a micro, you're only allowed to process a certain amount. We processed that in like a month. So number one, that was an issue. As well as, oh, sorry, I totally forgot what I was going to say there. My bad. Shouldn't have smoked the bowl before this. Could you repeat the question?
That's okay. Everyone does. Yeah, but you were just talking about the differences between the micro LPs and the standard. And the first one is definitely throughput, because if you're a micro, right, you have a very low cap on the amount of concentrate that you can produce in a year, right? But with the standard, do you have a cap, or is it just much larger, or is there no cap?
No, yeah, no cap, exactly. So that's a big reason why, in my opinion, you shouldn't go micro. As well as they don't give you a sales license. So, that's a huge problem with, once you make the product, you can't sell it to the Canadian government. You have to then piggyback off a standard license to then bring your product to market, which then, just causes a lot of headaches and pain. So,
So you're saying if you've got a micro license, you have to sell it through the government essentially. Otherwise, what you're saying is that you have to work with an LP to actually sell it through them. So those are your two choices. You can't,
Yeah,
you don't actually have a sales route if you're a micro.
exactly. So you have to then, rely on a standard LP or a bigger LP to help roll out your products. And what generally happens is, they don't want to put out your brand under their brand. So they'll just, kind of take credit for the grow and put it under their brand. It's a shame. So a lot of the micros right now don't get, their brands shown because of the way it's rolled out. So, yeah.
And was getting a standard LP, getting that license, was that difficult? Like, walk me through what went into getting that license. Cause I've heard all kinds of crazy stories about how tough that can be. But I'm not an expert. So, tell me, what was that process like?
Yeah, well, it took 3 years of, building it out. It's basically just a conversation with Health Canada is kind of how I put it. It's not as scary as it seems. It's just a back and forth with Health Canada until you get the proper requirements needed to obtain the license. So, the build out has to be finished, and this changes actually every day. So it could be different now than when I got it. But so we had to build out the whole farm first. We had to get a 5-stage security system, which you have to prove your security, your vault, all that fun stuff. Once that's finished, like I said, it's just a conversation with Health Canada. It's just a back and forth. You do your submission. They'll kind of tell you where you need to improve or if you don't, and then until you get the license. So. Anyone that's trying to get it, I would always just say, just go for it, because it's really not that scary. It's just a conversation. It might take some time. That's the thing. But other than that, if you got time, you should definitely go for it.
So you said it took you about 3 years from start to finish to get that process done.
Yeah, 3, maybe 4 years, and we're not even finished. Like, we're still working on, our SOPs, rolling out different SKUs. We're definitely not, a functioning machine yet. And we're still working on even obtaining our sales license. So hopefully this week or next week we'll hear back and get our sales license, which then will help release products.
So are you selling your hash right now through other LPs, or what does your actual market sales look like? I mean, I'm not phrasing that well, but
no, that's perfect. So that's exactly what we have to do for the Port North brand that we're launching. So that's the traditional hash. Flower rosin, cured water hash, temple balls, block hash. We had to go through T-God, so that's the Green Organic Dutchman, because they have their sales license already. And, it's just a way faster path to market than, going through and getting our sales license. So we signed, Port North to that contract, but Percy, we decided to wait because we weren't, in a hurry to even release the SKU because we didn't even have source material, found yet. So we finally found the animal face, and it's kind of aligned perfectly where we're going to receive our sales license at the same time we're going to finish up that SKU. So we'll be actually going under our own sales license for that drop, which is super exciting. And then anything moving forward, we'll have our own sales license.
Cool. That sounds like a long process. So out of curiosity, for anyone who's tuned in or who watches this in the future, do you have any advice for them about, how to get a license, or are there any tips or tricks or pitfalls you would encourage people to avoid?
Get a really, really good QA, a quality assurance person. Claire, my QA, has been a dream. She's, helped me write my SOPs, get them approved. Organizes everything, organizes the SKUs, the batch releases, the testing, everything. So the QA and the team that you have behind you is probably the most important thing, there's Missy right there. That's Missy. So the team is just really, really important. Yeah. And like I said before, it's a conversation.
Okay.
So it's just back and forth. That's my biggest advice is don't be scared. Like, just, submit what you got, and then they'll send it back, and keep at it until you get the license.
Sounds like some patience is necessary here too, given how long your journey's been.
Yeah, 100%. Like, you can't, for me, I wasn't in it for the money. I was wanting to do this because I'm obsessed with cannabis and passionate about it. And my idea was, if I failed 100 times, if I was 80 and I failed by the time I'm 80, I still worked with cannabis my whole way. So it didn't really matter to me. If I got it, I got it. If I didn't, it's fine. I still worked with cannabis.
Yeah, that's a super healthy attitude too, and especially for someone who is, working with solventless. I mean, it sounds like with your previous experience, when did you kind of know that you wanted to actually build a brand around solventless? Was it just because of the inherent quality that it has to be made by, or were there some other motivations between like making a brand? Because is your brand strictly solventless, or do you do multiple types of extraction?
No, yeah, so we only do solventless. And yeah, the whole idea behind that was, being taught by people like you and the mentors that I have. Solventless is, in my opinion, the truest representation of the strain's genetics and how they were grown. So there's no masking poor growing techniques. It's quality in, quality out, like that's what you guys say all the time. And it's truly, that's what it is. We're not magicians. We're not trying to take away or add anything. We're only expressing what's available on the plant. So you have to start with premium material. And with that thought process, I thought like, to develop that trust with the consumer and knowing quality cannabis, solventless is needed. And then, once we can, bang out amazing solventless products, they'll be like, where's the flower, you're using to make this stuff? And we'll be like, well, we'll have it right here. But I wanted to develop that trust that we know quality, and solventless, in my opinion, is the path to do that.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with everything you're saying, obviously. And I'm also really curious to know, what does solventless look like up in Canada, like as a market? Because it seems like it's taken a little bit to get there, and that on the, the black market side of things, people have been making, terrific ice water hash, bubble hash, and, even rosin for a while. But in the legal market, I remember even, like a year and a half ago, we walked into a dispensary in Toronto and we said, hey, do you have any rosin? They said, well, you could dab some RSO. With some RSO, you could dab. Yeah. And we were kind of chuckling about it. So what does solventless, like in the legal market, look like up in Canada? Is it still pretty small? Is it growing? What's the picture?
It's few and far between. Yeah, not to be rude or anything, but it's just, because, what we spoke about of how difficult it is to obtain the license, the micro or the standard, a lot of these legacy guys don't even, they look at that and they go, what's the point? I don't even want to, participate in something like that right now. So it's very difficult with the way they have it set up, where all these LPs are just focused on value and quantity and not quality. So yeah, it's just, we're in a part right now where there's huge, there's small pockets of really educated consumers, and there's small pockets of very, very brand new consumers. And the really, really educated consumers and the legacy guys haven't jumped into the rec market, and it's very obvious.
Yeah. We've heard that as well, that kind of there's a lot of pride, and I mean that in a good way, with, some of the civil disobedience that's come along with what has happened in Canada. And that, I think a lot of the older heads we've talked to, when I've talked to Bubble Man extensively, it's kind of like there's positive feelings for those people, because they're the people who have brought the market to where it is now, and that a lot of them feel that on the recreational side in Canada, some of the big LPs that have a lot of the funding, don't kind of respect those people quite as much, even though they're the ones that kind of put their necks on the line and push the industry so that it could become legal in the first place. Was that kind of your experience seeing that happen, or do you have a different take on that with like how things unfolded in Canada?
No, that's literally exactly how it's unfolding right now. So yeah, that's the shame of it. That's why we call it legacy, right? They built the rec market. They're the legacy to the rec market. I used to call it the black market, and I still kind of call it that because that's what I'm used to calling it. But I had someone, educate me and be like, this is the legacy market because they built, what you're doing now. And I'm a young guy, so I didn't, get to see all of the, work that went into building this industry, but I did get to see the end of it. I did live in the legacy market for a little bit there. And yeah, if I didn't live there and I didn't see all that culture, I wouldn't have the appreciation I do now, for the quality of concentrates and the consumers. they look at it as consumers, but it was patients first. That's what it was like in the States too. It was patients first, quality first, and that's why a lot of these guys don't want to be part of the rec market. They're kind of reefer madness 2.0, if you will. Like they're just ignoring what we've done or what they've done, and kind of doing their own thing, which is a shame. So I think in the next 5 years, we'll start to see, or even soon, sorry, in the next year to 5 years, we'll see the legacy market come into play, and a huge shift in quality of products. I hope so, anyways.
So kind of more of those people who are the OGs that know how to make and have the best stuff, or you think they're going to start entering the legal market, over the next couple of years, it sounds like?
Yeah, I really hope they do. A lot of them don't have reasons to. They're killing it, and they have a really, awesome, way of life. But yeah, I think the more that Canada, allows them to, we're going to see diversity of products and the actual educated consumers come into the game. When they talk about market share and all this stuff right now, I always laugh, because it's like you have all the, you just have the brand new consumers of cannabis. That's like 1% of the buyers. If I ask 20 of my friends, do you purchase legal cannabis? All of them say no. So there's a huge group of people in Canada that do not purchase rec cannabis, solely because the quality and the pricing isn't even close. So there's just no point.
Got it. That's a really interesting point, that, most of the people, it sounds like, who are in the know, they can't even buy the product that they want to buy at a dispensary anyway. So they don't go, and there's no point.
Exactly. And if it was there, it would probably be twice the price. And there's limits to THC, limits to purchasing, limits to everything. So yeah, a huge shift in how we look at regulation needs to happen, and the middleman needs to change, because my whole entire life I've never had the middleman tell me the price of something. And distribution's huge, don't get me wrong, we need that, we need help distributing, but to take 50 to 60% of markup, and then also the retail's got to mark it up. We're selling live rosin for $40. They're selling to the retailers for $80, and then the consumer's buying it for $130. That's ridiculous. If I set up a medical list right to my consumer right now, which we're working on actually, where if you have a prescription, you can choose us as your LP, we could sell it to you for $80, make double the money, and you're paying half the price. That's crazy to me. You know what I mean? No one wants to buy the rec market then. It's all customer prices. And it's just, yeah, it's that's what blows my mind. They think that they're gonna, switch over the legacy market with these, and it's just blind leading the blind. They have no clue.
That's outrageous. So a gram of your top hash rosin goes for well north of $100 retail. Does that include taxes?
Yeah, so let's see, the top one right now is Whistler. They have a live rosin on the market for $150 a gram plus, or plus tax on that. And that's just live rosin. That's not cold cure. That's not like, it's not Blue River Flan. That's nothing. Like, it's nice, don't get me wrong, but it's very expensive. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So
yeah,
trying to compete is impossible.
Yeah, even where I live, and I live up in the mountains here in Colorado, and it's more expensive than Denver. Like a gram of the best laser cat or 710 that money can buy is like $80 out the door. And then my coworker Cliff and some of my coworkers, they laugh. They're like, dude, I get that for 50, 60. And I feel like I'm getting ripped off. So if you're in Canada, hopefully this turns around. Do you think that prices will come down eventually, or are they going to remain high until they adjust the legislation? Because it sounds like that's a huge hangup for people adopting solventless in Canada.
Yeah, I think the retail market is going to remain fairly high. Just as long as the Canadian government has their paws in the mix, it's always going to have that markup that's a lot higher than directly to consumers. It is actually cool. Just on the other hand, in Saskatchewan, for example, they're a province you're able to actually sell it directly to the retailer. They're the only province that you're allowed to do that. but the consumers see a much better price. So that has to change before better pricing happens. But I don't want to see pricing drop too much to like what you're saying, 50, 60 a gram, because I don't want to look at it like tomatoes and corn and have to pay the same price for all of my live rosin. I like the diversity in cannabis. I like the diversity in flavors and the diversity in quality that we have in this industry. And the ag industry I would like to see that almost switch, and see a tomato with, more nutritional density where I don't need to eat 20 tomatoes to feel full. I could have one tomato that's actually delicious in flavor and actually good for me. So I kind of look at that as cannabis, and like, the time and work it takes to breed and select these things is one thing. The time it takes to, grow them out to their full potential is another. And when you're dealing with exotics, true exotics, they're high risk, high reward, right? They're not stable genetics. They take really long times to grow out, long flowers, very finicky, very, very complex terp profiles, 18 and up different terpenes within that profile, right? So it takes a long time to develop that and a skill. So I don't want to see, $60 a gram live rosin. I want to be able to pay 100. I'm still paying 120 for legacy market live rosin because I know, that live rosin is amazing, and the quality material and the work that went into that material was really, really well done. There's all these different things you can do in the industry, like blending and increasing your yields to increase the margin. And I want to be able to increase that margin in the quality. Like if it's quality, then I want to be able to increase that margin in the price point so that we can still put out these complex profiles. If we look at it like tomatoes and corn, we're going to lose those complex profiles, and everything's going to be the same across the board, and it's all going to be the same price, which is, what we see in ag right now. So, I just want to make sure that the quality is king, and people need to understand that, if there's transparency in the process, they're not always trying to charge the most. They're actually, putting out something that they really, really care about, that took really, really amount of work, and is another business just wouldn't look at it like that. They would just go, I only look at the bottom line. So, if we only look at that, we're not going to get that quality that we want. So, we just want to be able to pay for the work that's put in.
Yeah, I'm really impressed with what you're saying and how knowledgeable you are about all this stuff. I mean, your explanation about the exotics, that's something that I think a lot of people, it's lost on them, is that you can call something exotic and charge a lot for it, but you may not know how much difficulty there is in actually producing that, growing it, and how much effort the growers have to take to produce that kind of product. I kind of want to shift gears a tiny bit and ask you, speaking of all this material and high quality, since you guys aren't cultivating, do you go out and work with farms and then purchase product and process it for them? How does your supply chain work when it comes to actually sourcing cannabis that's high enough quality? And how do you determine that it's high enough quality that you actually want to run it?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. So yeah, half of the sourcing is for our own brands, and half of the sourcing would be for tolling or white labels. Most of the sourcing we do is for our own brands. Any tolling that we do, we're super picky with who we work with. Any work that we put out, it's always our name on that product, whether it's a collaboration or not. People know who made the product. So, we 99% of the stuff that we test, we turn away because it's not yielding quality, stable oil, or hash, right? It's just not good enough. And we're honest with them. We don't want to make a product just because we can. We want to make sure that we're putting out the best of our ability. And so we've made a lot of good connections that way, but we made a lot of bad connections that way because a lot of people don't like, when you tell them that the cannabis is poor quality. But, and yeah, so that's what we do. We travel, LP to LP. That's like 99% of the work we do is just constantly sourcing, looking for, the next drop, basically. Noticing all the different corners you can cut. And that's where I kind of, talk about exotics and how the rare they are to find in the LP industry, even in the legacy market industry, just because the difficulty in how they grow. When you look at the legal market right now, it's like 2-week veg, 55-day flower, 5-day rack tray dry. 6 harvests a year, 7 harvests. Like they're just pumping it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's when you get that's when you get the tomato look, you know, everything's the same, you know, and you're not going to get that complex variety and quality in that kind of grow. And you're not going to express the genetics that you need to. So, you know, we looked at so many different LPs. We finally landed on Carmel, which was doing a really, really good job of you know, their plant spacing. You could tell they weren't trying to jam pack it. The light could penetrate through. You know, they were doing everything right. They just weren't skipping corners. I don't want to give too many secrets, but they basically just weren't skipping corners. You know, full flower times. You could see these plants are you know, full of resin and deliciousness compared to like a 55-day, you know, flower. So it just there's a difference between what people grow and how they grow and what they're looking for. And if you're looking for quantity, it really, really affects your quality of product every time. So finding the micros, finding the LPs that are doing really, really well, working with finding the LPs that are working with genetic companies like JBZ or companies that are at least doing really well rather than just starting from scratch is really important. And just finding people that are really passionate about the product. Like I say, when we're sourcing, you have to be able to trust that grower that they're not going to give you just the bottoms or the you know, the lesser quality of that crop. You want to make sure that they're giving you the best of their best. So they care about that product just as much as you care about that product. And that's hard to find in an LP space. So when we found Carmel, we found the animal face, we were like, let's go, let's do this. And speaking on that, we are working on an LP. We just finished licensing in Napanee, Ontario, which will be growing. So it's a 20,000 square foot building, 2,000 square foot rooms. We'll be hand watering living soil, all for Percy.
Cool.
Yeah, so it'll help that problem that we're having now because finding the source material, and then also we talk about pricing and all that stuff we didn't get into, but that's difficult too. So growing your own solves that issue. It's also a risk reward thing, but now I feel like I'm just getting comfortable enough to start that.
So growing enough to where, do you guys have plans to start growing eventually, kind of as your company grows, so you have, you know, your own garden to source from? And obviously, like you said earlier on, it wasn't something you couldn't quite start with, but is that something you're intending to do?
Yeah, exactly. Hopefully in the next 4 months, we'll have seeds in the ground that will be our first single source. It'll be Do-Si-Do, Tire Fire, and just Function Junction. We haven't decided on which one we're going to be popping yet because they've been pheno hunting them in the legacy market for a while now, and they're just kind of deciding which one they want to put in the ground. So it's super exciting stuff. But that's going to help a lot with the sourcing of Percy. But it's only 20,000 square foot building with 2,000 square foot rooms. You can only get so much out of that. So we're still going to have to do sourcing and collaborations and stuff like that. But just with that top tier quality stuff, it's going to make it a lot more consistent, because it took me 3 years to find the animal face from Carmel. Like I said, we were licensed. 3 years later, we dropped. You know what I mean? We were the last one to market because it took us that long to find quality input for the Percy products.
Wow. Yeah, that's a lot of effort. And just quick 2 of 3 plug here. If you cannot stay for the whole thing, you want to watch this episode, this is going to be up on Instagram right afterwards. You can watch the whole episode, or it'll be up on YouTube. We'll have all the tags and all the links so you can follow all of Cody's brands and his personal page. So just so everyone knows, this will be going up. So the next question that I had for you was kind of like, now we talked a lot about growing, selecting strains, the whole process that goes into that. If I remember correctly, Eric Simpson came up and worked with you guys, and you guys worked with us and PureCannalabs. What was that training process like, and how was it working with Simpson Solventless? And, what did you learn, taking what you had learned before with Solventless and then kind of taking it to the next level? Walk everyone through that process and kind of how it was working with Eric.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was life-changing experience to say the least, and he doesn't even know that. But yeah,
I'll tell him on Monday. I'll see him next week. So
I still message him all the time too and bother him as much as I can. But Yeah, like it was an amazing experience. 'Cause I came in with theory, lots of theory, lots of studying, obsessed with it, watching Tony Brazier. I have a whole list when we go over it later of all the people that have influenced me. But like, all theory basically, and all panini presses or open blasting, even that's small scale, right? Compared to what I was trying to do, I was terrified. And I had just purchased two long speaks presses and a 65-gallon bucket and a dry freezer, and I was going to go to town. And I was terrified with the scale, with everything that I had to do. I had never done it. And so when Eric, came and showed me everything, so he washed 10,000 kgs in front of my face, and hand washed it all. The man's shoulders are massive, and so showing me everything. He showed me all of the tricks, and just to have that is life changing. To have a mentor, to have an idol, to have someone you can look up to ask questions. Saves you a lot of time, because I've screwed up a lot as well, and I still screw up, but it's a life-changing experience when you can have someone that has done it for that long show you everything, show you everything possible about it. And then every time I have a question, I ask the guy. He's just happy to answer it for me. And if I ever make millions of dollars, I'm going to give that guy half of it.
Well, I'm sure he'll be stoked to hear this. And, when you were working with Eric and when he was teaching you some stuff, was there anything that like really jumped out that you were really surprised by, or anything during that training process that, you weren't expecting?
Well, all of it was super overwhelming. But I don't think it was anything I wasn't like expecting. It was just like the way he explained what he was doing made a lot of sense, because it's all strain specific. Giving a recipe on something like this is very difficult, because it depends on if it's whole plant fresh frozen. It depends on if it's dried / cured. It depends on if the genetics are good. It depends on a lot of things. It depends on the glandular trichomes. There's a whole bunch of stuff. So having someone like that tell you all these different tricks and tips, like I said, saves you a lot of time on trial and error. You have all these different micron bags. You have all these different combinations of things you can try. And yeah, just having a guide to at least go and steer you in the right direction, in my opinion, is really important. Sorry, but yeah, I can't say much more about him other than he's like the most influential person in my career so far. Like, helped me a lot.
That's awesome. I'm sure he'll be stoked to hear about that. So, we got some great growers and some hash makers in the chat with us. And I have a little bit of a curveball for you, a fun question. I've seen and I follow you pretty closely. You wash fresh frozen, you've washed dried cured material, and I especially know since, Solventless Mind is in here watching right now, unless he just dropped out. You've washed both kinds, fresh frozen and dry. Do you have a preference? Are there pros and cons to each way? We preach a lot of fresh frozen for a variety of reasons, but it sounds like now you're starting to experiment with dried cured too. What are the differences with the kinds of hash that comes out the other end, depending on if your material is frozen or not?
Yes, super good question. I always look at it kind of like monoterpenes versus sesquiterpenes. And so, each cannabis strain or chemovar is going to do well in a certain method. If that chemovar is high in monoterpenes, it's probably going to do much better in fresh frozen, because you want to freeze and preserve the monoterpenes that are volatile. If that terpene profile is, dominant in sesquiterpenes, it's probably going to, do better in a dried / cured environment, because obviously we're able to express those sesquiterpenes when we dry / cure. We lose 80% of the monoterpenes and we end up with those sesquiterpenes, right? So just knowing that, you're able to, certain strains work really well in fresh frozen and certain strains work really well in dried / cured. And in my opinion, color really isn't an indicator of quality. It's just an indicator of degradation degradation is kind of a bad word because it sounds like quality, but just degradation of the trichome head. You know, it kind of starts out clear, milky white, you know, amber, red, and then black. So they're just stages of maturity and degradation, and each stage in maturity offers a different experience and flavor. So I can't tell you that, you know, one's better than the other. Medicinally, you know, the black Afghan hash could help someone, you know, a lot more than the fresh frozen. So it's all preference. I think some are a lot, you know, more to make. Like the fresh frozen side, you have to have knowledge in preserving, you know, the profiles and the trichome and stuff like that. So, and you're trying to freeze it in time and get it to the consumer's, you know, hands. So there's a lot of work that goes into fresh frozen. But I definitely don't have an opinion on which is better than the other in terms of, you know, how it makes a person feel. My preference is fresh frozen. I like the flavor, the loud, you know, smells and flavors that I get from the whole plant fresh frozen process, the live process. But yeah, like I said, it's all preference. That's why we make both. That's why Port North is a thing. Sorry.
No. And one more quick follow up on that, and I've kind of got my list in front of me. We're going all over the place a little bit.
Yeah, that's what I do.
Start sprinkling in. We've got like 2 questions. So you found that certain strains, you know, do better when they're dried. And are there any indicators where you might know ahead of time that it might be a strain that you want to dry and wash? And I know what you're saying about, you know, degradation. It's like chemical changes. It might not actually be degrading the overall quality. It's more of like a chemical maturity and change.
Exactly.
So do you have any ways to identify which kinds of strains go better one way or the other, or is it just trial and error?
Knowledge on the type of terpenes, right? So myrcene's a monoterpene, limonen's a monoterpene, caryophyllane's a sesquiterpene. Knowing these terpenes and their structures is really important. They all have different volatilities. They all have different boiling points. Knowing that, I think, is really important. And then just knowing the actual strains itself, having experience in the legacy market, you know, being able to smoke, you know, thug pugs, compounds, seed junkies, being able to experience all these different, you know, chemovars really, you know, gets you in tune with where certain things should go. You know, certain strains might do better in BHO than solventless just because the type of glandular trichome that it's producing, right? Or type of terpene profile. Say it's a hydrophilic terpene profile, water loving. You obviously don't want to throw that in the water hatch. So, you know, there's certain strains and profiles that are going to do really well just based off of, you know, it being hydrophobic or not. So just little stuff like that. But I think it's really important to know also like which terpene profiles, like I said, are going to get destroyed in that process and which ones are not. Like for example, a heat cure. If I were to heat cure the animal face like we're doing, the reason we chose that is because the top 3 dominant terpenes would be limonene, myrcene, and linalool. Limonene is the lowest boiling point, so it's going to evaporate off first. So knowing that, myrcene and linalool is next in line. It just gets stronger. It gets louder with flavor. I actually tried it with the lemon Skittles. Limonene, caryophyllene is next. Limonene gets destroyed in the heat cure. It smells like peppers and tastes like shit. So, you know, it's knowing these terpene profiles and knowing how they're going to react in cold and in heat and what you want to express is important.
So do you test your material or get the material tested so that you have an actual analytical basis for the terpenes that are in it? So the flower gets tested and you're looking at the terpenes and then kind of making decisions on where you want to go from there?
Yeah, everything that's what's lucky about working as an LP. Everything has to have a COA before you receive it. So there's actually a lot more science that goes into it than the legacy market, just due to the testing availability and the numbers that you have. Like, you know, the purity ratings, I never knew the purity of my hash and stuff before throwing it in the lab and then getting it tested for cannabinoids and terpenes and all that stuff. So yeah, I kind of forgot I was going there. Sorry.
That's cool. And for people who are tuned in, What is a chemovar? Explain that to everyone, because that's a term that I hear pretty rarely, but I'm expecting to hear a lot more of it soon as our like scientific understanding of concentrates, continues to increase.
Yeah, so chemovar just stands for chemical variety, and obviously it's just the complex profile that makes up the plant. So the cannabinoid profile and the terpene profile would be the chemovar. Well, actually, everything would be the chemovar, but when we're speaking about purity, we speak about cannabinoid and terpenes. And
okay, so interesting. So the chemovar is like kind of a subset of a phenotype where it's actually the different expressions of the cannabinoids, terpenes, flavonoids, different varieties, more from the chemical level is what you're saying.
Exactly, yeah. And you can get different chemovars from the same strain, knowing that that genetic is producing that chemovar at 55-day flower, and then a different one at 65, 75. Mm-hmm. They're producing different chemovars at different stages of flower. And that's what's super important about harvesting your plants on time and not too early. Because if you harvest too early, you're going to get like chalky THC white extract. It looks really good, but has no flavor. It tastes like cucumbers. It tastes like nothing because it hasn't had the chance to produce the chemovar yet, the genetics within the plant. So, knowing the genetics, knowing how far you need to take it to flower, and then pulling it, in a perfect world, a day before your first amber trichome appears, knowing that you're harvesting it at peak flower time. That way you're able to get the full profiles from the plant, the full experience.
Cool. Yeah, this is great. I think that this is a quality conversation with a lot of nuance, and that's exactly what I was hoping for. Also, I apologize to everyone who's in here because the questions that got asked, I don't know if Instagram changed it, but I only have white boxes, so I don't really have a good way to take those questions and ask them to you. So if anyone's got some burning ones, you just want to throw it up in the comments, we'll try and get to those real quick, but I wasn't aware that there was a change there. I know we're kind of getting towards the end of our time here. I've got a couple of really important questions I want to go through while we still have you. What can you teach newer hash makers that are trying to get into doing solventless, whether it's in Canada specifically or elsewhere? I always like to ask this question of our guests. What advice can you pass on to them so that they can have their best shot at what you're doing?
Trial and error is huge. Not being afraid to fail and screw up. There's been so many times where I've come home almost in tears, just defeated by the whole process. But just being able to try again is really, really important. And working with the plant because you're passionate about it, you'll start to see that that really matters. Authenticity. Terrible. I can't pronounce that word. Really matters. Being authentic really, really matters. Just because if you're not doing what you love, people are going to notice that, and it's going to show in your end product, no matter what you do in life. So just make sure you love it, and then the money will come.
Nice. Great advice. Someone put that on a wall somewhere. I'm going to scroll through a couple of these questions since as soon as I open up the floodgates, there's quite a few here. Someone was talking about, what does Carmel grow in? Is it rock wool? And I think maybe more broadly, do you have soil mediums that you think work best for solventless friendly cultivars and chemovars, or does it just really just depend like everything else?
Yeah, that's basically my answer to everything. It depends, strain specific always, but everything can be done in quality in any manner. There's tons of ways to get the job done. I do believe living soil, it gives the right nutrients when the plant needs it. The plant's kind of in charge when it wants things and when it needs it. So you're able to express a lot more complex profiles, in my opinion, when I lab test and when we look a more complex flavor profile to the other one. Like we've actually had, salts, newts versus living soil, same strain, same guy grown. We tested it, we smoked it. Both of them were fantastic. The newts one, really, really gassy, dense bud structure. It looked probably better bag appeal wise, right? Like it just looked coated in crystals and slapped me. But when I grabbed the other one, I was like, this is cheese, gas, what is my smelling here? This is crazy. Like it was a whole complex profile, but it was a lot airier bud structure, bigger bud as well. So just differences. That it goes back to maturity, and not to say that black Afghan is better than premium live rosin. It's all preference. So yeah, I always leave it at preference.
Yeah, that's smart, and that's something that we've seen a lot of too. And like a lot of the older heads that I talk to, they love live rosin, but probably hand pressed hash as a bowl topper, and some of the maybe non full melt bubble hash is kind of what they tend to prefer. So there is a ton of preference there, and I'll get just a couple more in here. When it comes to how you're pressing, do you have a temperature range that you like to operate in, or how do you kind of determine like what your actual pressing temperature is going to end up being? Because obviously higher quality, you need far less heat to accomplish what you're probably trying to look for, whereas lower quality, you've got to throw more heat on it. What would you tell people for trying to find the right temperature to press at?
Yeah, so really, really good question again. It comes down to quality, like you were saying, but it also comes down to volatility of the profiles, the terpene profiles you're working with. If I'm working with a really, really melty hash, really, really volatile terps, it's going to need really, really low heat to, express through the filter. So it's just knowing the volatilities. I think I can't remember if it was Rackham's or someone, but they're saying how they can tell what temperature they need just by squeezing it and seeing how long it melts on, or how long it takes to melt out, right? How long it takes to sweat out. So just experience and knowing what you're trying to express is really, really helpful. Flower rosin is a whole other different thing when we talk about temperature, because the flower starts to act as a sponge rather than exactly. You need higher temperatures to be able to express it through the filter. So we talk about relative humidity, all that stuff. But yeah, there's a range of temperatures from like 150 to 220 and up that you can press from, and that's going to really depend on the product you're working with, whether it's dried/cured, whether it's whole plant fresh frozen.
And I know since you're in Canada, we're talking Fahrenheit here. So for everyone up there who is lucky enough to be on the metric system, and we're so used to imperial, Fahrenheit.
Yeah. It's funny because I talk in Fahrenheit, and people are like, why are you saying that? I'm like, all my mentors taught me that. They taught me in the States, so that's what I'm like.
Goddamn Yankees.
Yeah,
that's really funny. Okay, so we've only got maybe like 5 to 6 minutes left here, and I always have a bad habit of like asking someone a really thought-provoking question 1 minute before Instagram kicks us off, because it gives you 60 minutes to done, and then it just ends.
Right,
so we'll try not to do that, so you're not in the middle of an explanation. But it sounds like you wrote your list down. Tell me about some hash makers that inspire you. Who have you learned from, and who would you recommend that people that are tuned in, like, who should they go out and follow and learn from?
This is prepared for. Sure, I didn't forget this. I was even going, holy, I forgot like some. On my work or my life, both actually. So,
okay.
Start with Eric Lasky. Watch videos. Years and years.
That, but thank you.
We talk about, you make videos with Nicotine and Sam and all those guys. So it's awesome to watch that and learn from that. So Eric Lasky, Eric Simpson, Jessica Gibson, really, really helpful from Pure Pressure, really good hash maker. Phil from Simpson Solventless, one of the first to do it. Absolutely amazing guy. Tony Berzura, I ask him questions all the time, bother him, and he answers me, and he's super, super nice and super knowledgeable. Sam at Mile High, one of the first guys that taught me how to pack a bag. I'll never forget that. Ken Wall, guy that taught me a lot of those old videos. Nicotine, another guy that taught me a lot in those old videos. Rackham's. Mila Jensen, Frenchie Cannoli, Marcus, and some BC Bubble. Man, growing up watching Mila, Frenchie, Marcus, and all that happen was truly amazing to experience. Brad at 710 Labs, Julian at Dab Logic, Tukes and Ryan at Oleo, Dogman True, Dave from Gastown, Kind Selections. All these people influence me and make me push harder. And Omi, Curtis Ohm, that's probably one of my favorite hash makers. He's my partner.
Nice.
Yeah,
that is awesome. That is a thorough list, and it's great to hear that not only are you a part of the scene, but that you follow so many hash makers that are making the industry what it is. So with the remaining time we've got left, because it's going to kick us off pretty soon, tell everyone what are your plans for your brands? What are you trying to do in the next year or two? And then we'll end that with where can people actually find some of your products so that they can go pick up some of your hash? Because seriously, for everyone who's tuning in, I remember the first pictures you were putting out, a while ago when Eric Simpson came up there and you were learning, and now looking at the hash that you're putting out, it's crazy how much better it looks, and I'm sure how far you've come. So what are your plans for the next year or two?
Just to keep getting better, putting out quality products. That's our biggest, most important thing. We're not going to be putting out any products that we're not proud of. So just developing that brand, developing the trust in the consumer that we know quality and that we care. And then we'll see where that goes. But that's my goal right now. It's just to become one of the top producers in Canada that's solely on quality and trust in the consumer. That's the goal. We'll see what happens.
Nice.
Yeah, and sorry, I guess I should mention that.
And you have a couple different.
Sorry, yeah, that's what I was going to. Yeah, sorry, that's what I was going to mention. So the Port North would be the first brand that we're dropping, which is the traditional hash. So we talked about the old heads that like the more smoother experiences. Aged Temple Balls, cured water hash. We have Canadian black hash, which is a kind of an ode to Moroccan black hash. And flower rosin, just the basics, where Percy is, the modern day smoker, the I want the plant in my mouth kind of person, and the best of the best. We're, like I said, it took us 3 years to find the first drop. It might take us 3 years to find the next. We're in no hurry. We're truly looking for exotic strains that are complex profiles and that slap you in the face. That's the whole goal.
Nice. Yeah. And you guys, do you sell your products mainly just where you're at, or do your products kind of cross provinces? I'm not real knowledgeable about that. So
yeah, so we'll be in Saskatchewan. We actually received our first POs from Saskatchewan last week, which is really exciting, and a few other provinces. So BC, Alberta, Manitoba. Ontario will be the last one to get it, unfortunately, just because they roll out on a schedule. So next month, when their schedule comes up, we'll be rolling out in Ontario as well. So Port North, the 3 strains of flower rosin, Mandarin cookies, black cherry punch, and lemon Skittles. And then the animal phase will be heading to store, around 420, maybe a month or so after, if it takes to actually get to the store. Stores,
nice.
I could say retail.
That's how it works strains, man.
In Canada. Thank you.
Okay. Cool. I think we're going to be up in Toronto in November, because now that people are starting to get vaccinated and trade shows are coming back along. So hopefully we can catch you the next time we come up to Canada, now that we're going to start traveling again. But just for everyone here, we're going to have this full episode up. Thank you. We got lots of tags, so make sure that you follow all of Cody's brands, Port North and the rest of them. Cody, thank you so much for joining me today. Great insight. Super appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's truly an honor to be a part of these videos. Yeah, thank you very much.
Hey, my pleasure, and appreciate you helping teach everyone a whole lot today. So I'm going to get this up right now. Have a great rest of your day, everyone, and I will let everyone know, periodically as we find people that are, good to come on the show. So Cody, thanks, and I'll talk to you soon.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right, bye.